Welcome back. We want to tell you about some sad breaking news. Legendary wrestler and star Hulk Hogan has died. That is according to the WWE. The star of the ring, big and small screens, was 71 years old. CBS News correspondent Chanel Call has been monitoring this story for us. Chanel, I know this is just breaking right now, but what information do you have so far?
Well, Mugo, the WWE confirming this just moments ago. Wrestling legend Hulk Hogan has died at 71 years old. According, Mugo, to EMS dispatch, emergency services were called to Hogan's Clearwater, Florida home for cardiac arrest just before 10 o'clock this morning. What you're seeing on your screen here is the post on X just moments ago from the WWE. I'll read it to you. It says, WWE is saddened to learn WWE Hall of Famer Hulk Hogan has passed away. One of pop culture's most recognizable figures, Hogan helped WWE achieve global recognition in the 1980s. WWE extends its condolences to Hogan's family, friends, and fans. Hogan was born as Terry Bollea in Augusta, Georgia, that is. Mugo, he made his professional wrestling debut back in 1977 and quickly became a household name. He was known for his theatrical performances in the ring. He had this, larger-than-life persona. Yeah. You might remember that signature leg drop move. And then by the 1980s, he became this global icon, right? He was leading the WWF, now the WWE. He's been credited, Mugo, with broadening the sports audience. This had a really narrow audience when he first got into the sport. And then ultimately he made it a family entertainment sport. He was ultimately inducted into the WWE Hall of Fame by 2005 by Sylvester Stallone, actually. And he also had a lot of success, Mugo, outside the ring. This is someone who was starring in Hollywood movies. In 1982, he was in Rocky III. And then he was also in some TV shows you might remember, Thunder in Paradise, and then, of course, Hogan Knows Best. But we should also mention that this is someone who did face some personal challenges in his life, including that high-profile divorce, and then there were also some legal issues related to a sex tape. And you might remember this, Mugo, that sex tape was leaked by Gawker in 2012. Hogan had said that he didn't know he was being filmed. He also claimed emotional distress. And then ultimately he sued Gawker over that leak. And then during that trial, there was an audio recording from the video that was submitted into evidence. And then in that recording, Hogan had said, quote, "I guess we're all a little racist." Mm-hmm. He also used the N-word while referring to his daughter's love life at the time. Hogan later called that 2007 incident the, quote, biggest mistake of his life. And it also prompted the WWE to cut ties with him. So again, the WWE this hour confirming that wrestling legend Hulk Hogan has now died at 71 years old. Again, someone with a very decorated career in professional wrestling, but also a bit of a complicated history here.
Yeah, a bit of a complicated history indeed. We know he was also at the RNC just last year, but even just growing up in Nigeria, my brothers would watch him all the time. I think when it comes to wrestling in general and even movies, he is a name that is just so well known regardless of the controversies that came along with him. So Chanel Call, thank you so much for your reporting. We appreciate it.
Let's bring in WWE professional wrestler Chelsea Green for more on all of this. Chelsea, thank you so much for being with us. I know this must come as a shock to you. Can you walk us through your initial thoughts when you heard the news this morning?
I mean, polarizing political views aside, he was an absolute icon. And if it weren't for Hulk Hogan, there are many of us in the wrestling industry that would absolutely not be here. He inspired a massive generation. So it's a loss that we are feeling deeply in the wrestling community.
I can only imagine. Chelsea, you just announced Ultimate Edition figures to be released with Hulk Hogan at Comic-Con today. How did Hogan shape your career professionally, and what was your relationship with him?
Well, he showed up to Raw and SmackDown with an energy that truly was unmatched. And we actually just saw him at the Netflix premiere of Raw in January. He was very alive, very well, very just full of spirit and energy. So, that's the Hulk that I knew and I grew up with. My husband is a ride or die Hulk Hogan fan. And so he's definitely feeling the loss today. I can only imagine that my coworkers are, taking it very hard as well.
And I know he was very supportive of female wrestlers as well. Do you have a favorite memory of Hulk Hogan that sticks out in your mind?
I don't think I could possibly begin to tell you one memory because, I mean, think about all of the impact that he had on wrestling. And then on top of that, he was a Florida local, and I'm here in Florida as well. So we would often see him at his shop and at the beach and out and about. And he was just, he was one of a kind.
Yeah, so many of his close friends and colleagues will say that, when he entered the room, the temperature changed. It went up. It was all of a sudden this energy kind of came into wherever he was. How do you think other wrestlers are going to remember him as well?
I think exactly the same way that I'm saying. They're probably going to put it even better than I can possibly word it because, I think all of the 80s and 90s babies really grew up with Hulk as their idol in one way or another. And I can't imagine what his family is feeling right now, but it's amazing to see the community, and not just the wrestling community, but the community come together and honor an American icon.
I mean, he really was a pioneer when you think about it, because he not only was a star in the wrestling world and continued to be, but he was also able to transfer that to a television career and a film career. I mean, how extraordinary is that in your profession?
I think that's the very unique thing about Hulk, and we've seen it a couple times since then with The Rock and John Cena, but these men transcend wrestling. There are people well outside of this wrestling world that know who those three men are. And that's what makes it really special. Hulk Hogan walked so that we could all run in Hollywood.
And did he give you any pieces of advice? Did you ever go up to him and say, hey, Hulk, I really want to try this, or I've been wanting to dip my toe into that. What's your advice? Did he ever give you any kind of career advice or maybe life advice?
At the beginning of my career, I had a couple of run-ins with him, before I was in WWE, before I was anyone. And all I can say is that the positivity and the encouragement that he provided to me 10 years ago still sticks in my brain. And I'm going to carry that on throughout my career because he was just such a trailblazer and he wasn't afraid of anything. And I think that's the beauty of Hulk, is that he rubbed off on all of us in that way.
Mm-hmm. Do you think there's going to be anybody else like him in the world of wrestling?
There couldn't possibly be. We can all try to emulate him. We can all try to, have that Hulk Hogan tan that's so famous and bring that star power. But at the end of the day, there's one and only one Hulkster.
Yeah, Hulkster. I love that. He had a sparkle when he entered the ring. Chelsea Green, thank you so much for being with us.
Thank you.
Let's bring in host and fight announcer Karan Bhatia for much more on this. Karan, thank you so much for joining us today. Can you walk us through Hulk Hogan's legacy here, and how did he climb the ranks through the WWE to be the big star he turned out to be?
Yeah, absolutely. Rest in peace to Hulk Hogan, the legend, of course. And Hulk Hogan was really synonymous with World Wrestling Entertainment, right? WWE, as it was known originally, WWF. He also fought in WCW. And I think the reason that Hulk Hogan resonated with so many fans is that he really was a larger than life personality. He had all the catchphrases, "What you gonna do, brother?" and the Hulkamania persona. And I think that really resonated with the fan base. And Hulk Hogan was a trailblazer, right? He took wrestling from back rooms and, smoky arenas to the mainstream, right? Mainstream television, mainstream networks. And I think that's because his persona, the Hulkamania, the Hulkamaniacs, right? They all rallied around this guy for everything he brought. And so I think he was a pioneer in his field. He was a 6-time champion in WWE. He fought the likes of Andre the Giant, The Rock, and so many others. And I think that's really what skyrocketed him. The fact that people could relate to Hulk Hogan, and certainly a legend in the sport of wrestling.
Yeah, it's hard to forget his many gimmicks, too, especially when he walks into the ring and then rips his shirt off. Like, you expect that from Hulk Hogan. But you talk about, all of the things that he's able to do, his gimmicks when he comes into the ring. And then the fact that he, for some reason, just stayed on. His name, his personality, his legacy, it just stayed on, even when he left WWE and went to WCW. So how did his presence in the ring basically help his brand grow to what it is and what we know of it as today?
Yeah, I think you mentioned it right there, the longevity of it all, right? And the
Yeah.
fact that he was able to WWF, WWE, WCW, and just keep going. And also, as we know in wrestling entertainment, there's different character arcs that take place. You got the villain arc, the heel turn, all of that. And so I think the fact that Hogan was such a fan favorite, but then able to tap into a little bit of that heel turn as well, and just continuing to reinvent himself for so many years. And I think, like I said before, he was really synonymous with WWE and that rise. And I
Yeah.
think it was about getting in there during that growth period, and riding that wave into making World Wrestling into what it is now. And also part of it too is then he crossed over into the mainstream, and that was because of reality shows like Hogan Knows Best, where we got to meet his family. And there was an authenticity to him, right? Real world, problems happening to him and his family. And I think that just enhanced that connection he had with his fans and the audience of, this is a real authentic person who we're seeing in wrestling, but now you're seeing him a little bit outside of the ring. And that crossover appeal, also being in many movies and just being part of American culture, being a part of that fabric. That's really his legacy.
Yeah, and I think there's so many wrestlers today who talk about why they went into wrestling, and they say it's because of Hulk Hogan, whether they're wrestlers with the WWE or with other companies. So what legacy do you think he leaves behind?
Yeah, I think it's that pioneer, that trailblazer, and I think it was like we've been saying here, connecting with the audience in a way it wasn't done before. And you mentioned other wrestlers that came along later. And so if you look at very popular wrestlers like The Rock or Stone Cold Steve Austin, all of them,
Yes.
what they were able to do was connect with the fan base, right? And you're seeing that now even in modern wrestling. But really Hulk Hogan was that pioneer to not only take it from those small, ballrooms and those smoky arenas, but make it a national sport, a global sport, and make it into this global phenomenon that it became. And so you had those fans internationally, and that really is his legacy, that so many other wrestlers followed on it, and that wouldn't have been possible without the work of Hulk Hogan. And to your point, it was because he was able to have that longevity and stay connected with the fans. And so, it was a complicated legacy, but definitely an influential one. And we know later on, had different legal issues. He of course, dipped his toes into politics in terms of, picking one side or the other, and
Yeah.
making his presence known in that way as well. So definitely an influential figure in the world of wrestling, and then someone who transcended sports into just the mainstream culture.
Yeah, and Kurt, I think there's so many different companies now that, dabble with wrestling. And for some reason, WWE has stayed on as the dominant figure when it comes to the wrestling industry. How much do you think Hulk Hogan played into that?
Yeah, I think that's a huge part of it, because if you look at any combat sport, right? For example, if you look at boxing, right? One of the issues that was plaguing boxing for a long time was the fragmented nature of the sport. Now, if you look at mixed martial arts, you could say a large portion of competitors are under the UFC umbrella. If you're under one umbrella, you can make essentially the best fight the best. That can be difficult if there's many different promoters and networks. And if you look at what WWE did, right, taking different promoters, putting everything together under one umbrella, and that way you are getting that connection with the fans, because you're able to watch your favorite fighter compete against the other great fighters. And
Yes.
and so that was something Hulk Hogan was able to do, right? And obviously we mentioned six-time champion. And so, that was really it. It's bringing it all together, getting the best, competing against the best. And of course, in WWE, there's the storytelling element, right? It's not just what you do in the ring, but of course, connecting with the fans. And it really was that persona. You mentioned ripping the shirt off and the catchphrases. And so because WWE was able to become this national brand, and this global brand, that had, that you were able to see the same fighters every week, you were able to see them compete, and that just continues that longevity that we've been talking about. And so it was about staying active, resonating with the audience, and being authentic.
Yeah, you cannot think of wrestling without thinking of Hulk Hogan. Karan Bhatia,
Correct.
thank you so much for your insight today. We appreciate it.
For more on Hogan's life, Mark Raimondi joins us now. He is a reporter for ESPN. Thank you so much for joining us. He is also the author of the recently released book, Say Hello to the Bad Guys: How Professional Wrestling's New World Order Changed America. I want to start with just the impact that he had on pro wrestling. Can you just put that into context for us?
Yeah, Meg, major impact. Before 1985, when Hulk Hogan was the front man for the WWF and headlined WrestleMania 1, The industry of wrestling was very splintered. It was regional, and WrestleMania 1 was the first chance at a real like national level type of mainstream attention. And Hogan was the guy. He was the guy leading it. That they, him and Mr. T, who was his tag team partner in that main event, they hosted Saturday Night Live the night before. So it was a really big deal in '85. And then in the '90s, he was also at the forefront of another wrestling boom period. And frankly, I'm not sure what the wrestling business would be right now if not for Hulk Hogan.
Mark, he made such an incredible impact in terms of being an entertainer both inside and outside of the ring. It's hard to put it into perspective, but try to paint a picture for us a little bit.
Larger than life figure, especially in the 1980s with the red and yellow and his signature facial hair, right? The Fu Manchu. He was as recognizable as anyone in the 80s, right up there with the Stallones and the Schwarzeneggers. He was one of the biggest stars really in the country and the world. And he parlayed that into a lot of business. No one sold more tickets in the history of professional wrestling than Hulk Hogan did.
Yes, I mean, as a teenager in the 1980s, I remember it vividly. In recent years, Hogan has been an outspoken supporter of President Trump. How did that affect his popularity?
It certainly took a hit, and he his last appearance for the WWE was back in January, and that was on their debut on Netflix in Los Angeles, and he was booed. He was booed, and he was promoting his new beer that came out, Real American Beer, and the crowd really did not like him, and that was kind of a contrast to the Hulk Hogan that we know, where he was a beloved figure. So things have changed over the years, certainly, but there's no doubt, Meg, that, again, pioneer of wrestling and perhaps the greatest of all time in terms of selling tickets and pay-per-views and really getting wrestling the interest that it now has.
The GOAT, for sure. Mark Raimondi, thank you so much. Appreciate your time.